Hello. Welcome to USD Conversations, our new weekly speaker series featuring faculty, alumni, and friends who are here to share their insights around current events and timely themes. This is hosted by the College of Arts and Sciences and the Humanities Center. And my name, I think you already know, but it's Noel Norton, and I'm the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. So today's topic is how to teach theater when the lights go out, with guest speakers Jesse Perez and Shana Wride. So during the era of COVID-19, artists are looking for innovative ways to share their craft. So in the next hour or two, our speakers are going to offer some thoughts on how they can possibly teach an art form that thrives on people gathering in groups. It's fascinating. And they're going to tell us how we can deal with this reality in a time of isolation. So Jesse Perez is an actor, director, and choreographer who joined us at USD in 2018 as the director of the Old Globe and University of San Diego Shiley Graduate Theater Program. And he is the holder of the Craig Noel Endowed Chair. Prior to his tenure at USD, he was a guest artist and faculty member at the Juilliard School, where he choreographed, directed, and taught for 12 years. Shana Wride is the program coordinator for the Old Globe and University of San Diego Shiley Graduate Theater Program. She has worked as an actor and a director, both locally and regionally, with such theaters as the Old Globe, the Signet Theater, and the North Coast Repertory Theater. She is a two-time recipient of the San Diego Critics Circle Craig Noel Award for Acting. So you're going to have a fabulous discussion today. I thank both of you. I'm going to turn this over to you in a minute. I thank both of you for being here today. I thank all of you in the audience for being our first at this new experiment. So now I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Tanya Aben. She will be facilitating this discussion and taking questions from the audience through our chat feature. So please feel free to write in. And at this moment, let's just get started.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to reiterate that we will have a Q&A for the last 20 minutes of this hour. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions using the chat feature. I'd like to start the conversation by asking Shana and Jesse, how have you been adapting since USD has gone remote?
Hi, Shana Wride. How are you?
Jesse Perez, how are you? Hi, everybody. 40 people. I'm terrified.
It's good to see you. I think we're just going to do our daily check-in. I heard the question that Tanya asked, but I think, it's a big question because there's been quite an adjustment knowing that we meet in a dance studio every day, do movement in front of each other, vocalize in big rooms, try to use our voice to its fullest capacity. And now we're all trapped in Zoom world. And we have to figure out how to teach theater in this new medium. And I think it's an interesting question what COVID-19 has done. But I feel like we should start at the beginning, right, Shana? Like when we were just about to open a show at the Studio Theater on campus at USD.
Yep, we were just ready to produce The Visit on campus, and like everyone else, I'm imagining, we started hearing rumors about things maybe needing to change. I was actually in a show at the time, and I was receiving texts from Nate Party and Dana McNeil saying, we need to figure out how many people are in the audience. We can't have more than 100 people. So I was sort of feverishly trying to adjust the size of the audience allowed in the studio theater. And we were sort of like realizing, like everybody else, moment by moment, bit by bit, we were having to make these pivots based on these sort of decisions from higher up. And our program is, like everybody's unique, our program is unique in that it is a joint effort between the Old Globe and the University of San Diego. So Jesse and I were getting information and emails and phone calls and texts from two institutions as we were trying to decide what to do with The Visit. And Jesse wisely decided, as we were sort of realizing that as much as we wanted to open the show 2 nights before we were open. The sets were built, the sound design was in, the lights were hung, the costumes were made, the rehearsals were ready to go, the photographer was on his way, the videographer was on his way. Jesse had to make the brutal decision.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, when the president declared it a national emergency, it was March 13th. We were on the ground rehearsing March 12th. And we got information. We were going to open The Visit by Friedrich Dürrenmatt on the 14th. So it all started, coming to a head, and we started getting information. And of course, the students started getting a little rattled, started to hear what was going on in New York, in China, in Italy. And all of a sudden, we were trying to push on through because we're live performers, and we wanted to be in the room and commune and know that we were not alone. But little did we know that being alone was the best solution to keep everybody safe. Yeah. And so as the information started coming down and we were holding tons of faculty meetings, chair meetings, director meetings, it just started to become clear that the world was saying no. And so as much as we're artists and we always say the show must go on, not necessarily. Sometimes life is more important. And we met on March 12th, and we were going to do a final run through on the 13th and open on the 14th with food and a big celebration. And on the 13th, we decided to pull the plug. And of course, we got in touch with stage management first, who really leads the production. And it's Nicole Reese, and she's a mother of 2, and just nicely reached out to everybody and said, we got as far as we could. And thank you for all your work, and we will reconvene. Yeah. I was also even thinking that we would gather the next week and still do classes. We had scenes going up in Acting 4 that I was really excited about. But then again, to just let it all go for a second and then regroup and start realizing that we're in a new world and we have to adjust, and artists adjust. So we started to look at our curriculum and started to see what would work in this new medium.
Yeah, and I have to say, it was one of those moments when we were all gathered with the faculty and the staff and everybody who works on the theater program to sort of look at our different options and how quickly we had to keep changing. Is when I realized how what a great group of people we work with. It was really astounding because I think when you're working on something that you're passionate about, as all of us on this campus, I would imagine, right, are working on something that matters to us, that we're passionate about. And so when you're told that you have to sort of make a complete left or right turn, we were surrounded by people immediately who were like, okay, let's figure out this Zoom thing. Okay, let's have a Zoom meeting. Let's decide how we could do this. And then we had to start looking at how do we do voice? How does one do movement classes, acting classes? So some of the English classes were a little bit easier, but we spent that week sort of figuring out, I think like we all are, what is realistic and what isn't. And we were all in a bit of a survival mode, I think. More than a thriving, more of a surviving sort of mode. And because we all care so much about what we do, it was astounding to me to watch everybody just start to suit up and show up and start making plans on what was possible. We also had, by this point, theaters across the country, theater institutions, educational institutions across the country were starting to gather on social media and emails, to try to decide how could we possibly do this live thing that so requires the thing that makes theater special, right? Is that there you can hear the audience laughing, or you can, be in a moment's notice something might change, and how do we let this new world have some of that, but also realize that we can't try to make the old thing into this new world. We have to figure out what the new world also brings. And I feel like we're surrounded by a group of students and educators that really, and designers and artists that really care about that. And it's been really great to be a part of.
Yeah, it's interesting because, we would have faculty meetings, and there was one time that we were having an extended faculty meeting with adjunct faculty, extended faculty, and Eileen Troberman, our Alexander teacher, who's in the movement department, said at one point, hey, I can Zoom in if you need me to. And this was before anything happened. And I was like, Zoom? And it was so interesting because our Alexander teacher had already started using the Zoom platform to teach Alexander. And so she had a leg up. And little did we know that when the whole world turned upside down, that Eileen would step forward and be like, hey, I can tutor people. I've been doing it. I teach on Zoom all the time. And it became this really a light bulb moment where it was like, oh my God, we have someone to lean on. But of course, being an educator, you start thinking, what can work on this medium? And you start wondering if movement classes, ensemble building classes, acting classes that are done in the moment where you have to overlap dialogue, especially in contemporary work, how does that work with the lag time on Zoom? Where do we put our eye line to make it seem like we're talking to somebody off camera, or do we look right in the camera and everything becomes a Shakespeare aside, you know? So it just starts becoming like, how do we use this medium knowing that there's the hope of getting back on our feet in a studio together to actually put the work that we've experimented and worked with in this medium back to our home base, which is the theater, which is in front of people, which is, you know, the essence of storytelling, sitting around a campfire and somebody just getting up and telling us a little tale that just inspires us or scares us or excites us or takes us to a different world that we never thought of, you know? And so all of a sudden it's like, I yearn for that to happen. Half of my movement exercises are about building ensemble, and it's about touch, smell, holding, bumping into each other, collisions, human collisions. What does it do to the human body when it interacts with another human body? And for a second, we have to press the pause button and focus on other things.
Yeah. And I also think, you know, as someone who works in the program and also works as someone in the theater, I think some people are finding a more, an easier adjustment to this realm than others. Some of our students even respond more to the idea of a camera than, you know what I mean, than you do. And one of the things we had to think about, like everybody did immediately, was, I don't know if you felt like this, Jesse, but I felt like we were all kind of thrown into a pool, like when a kid learns to swim, and like we just went down. And then, you know what I mean? Like we all got up and we were doing test meetings and we were all figuring it out and we were communicating. We were having town halls with the students and the faculty. And it felt like we were finding our way. And one of the things, Jesse, I'm so grateful to Jesse, is because we're all theater artists as well, we were watching all the people around us, you know, struggle. This situation has affected artists in the theater community and in all art communities on a scale that I don't think most of us can even realize. And so we had a production that was, you know, like everybody was thinking about, okay, so what's the next thing then? And we realized, we canceled the visit and we realized we have a production scheduled, you know, down the road at the end of the semester. What do we do with that? And we reached out, Jesse made the right call. We started looking at, you know, is this something we could do? And we reached out to all these artists we work with and these students, and we decided to do the crazy thing, which is try to create a theater experience using this medium, but surrender the results.
That's right.
And I think that is where we have the advantage to most theater companies, to all theater companies, is that as an educational program, we're not as dependent on the bottom line or the ticket sales or the subscriptions, or, you know what I mean, or what the critics say. And so we had this luxury to focus on process. And I think that is one area that makes the program succeed, is that we have a bunch of people who love the process. It isn't just about there, ta-da, there it is. You know what I mean? We have, we were able to work with these beautiful artists and these students on this play, Jose Rivera's The Promise, you know, because we knew we could focus exclusively on how to tell this story in this world. Surrender the results. Don't try to make it something it can't be. You know what I mean? And so that is something I don't know, I'm personally very proud of, you know, in terms of opportunities for the students.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, every training program should always be focused on process. you know, and not on the end product. But of course, we get carried away as performers. The adrenaline takes over. There's an audience there. We start getting reactions, whether it's oohs or ahs or a laugh. And we try to ride those waves, you know, as performers. And it becomes this other thing. So I just think that, like, when we start talking about what process is, it should always be process. Even the run, you never get to the end of a play because the plays are bigger than us. Hopefully, if it's a great playwright, which there's a lot out there, you know, and there's great characters that have been created by these amazing minds that we're never gonna actually conquer. And that's okay. Like, I think that is huge. Like, I would be crazy if I came up to you and said, yeah, when I was 23, I did the definitive Constantine. Too bad you missed it. It was, you know, amazing. But the truth is, that character by Chekhov is so complicated that I will never get to the end of the line. So it's constantly process, you know? I wonder how the Moscow Art Theater thinks about it when they get to perform and rehearse for 5 months and then do it. And I wonder if in their head, they're still like, it's still process. Because I think a lot of them would say that. Because the truth is, they're bigger than us. The Promise by Jose Rivera, difficult piece, but it was such an opportunity for our students to sink their teeth into these words, this magical realism, this different style. Our first years got to be introduced to James Vasquez, who's an amazing theater artist, among other things, a human being. He's a great educator, and I just didn't want to miss that opportunity. So we tried to see how we can save this and focus on process, which should have always been the goal. And so we created something that nobody will ever see. We're keeping it completely in-house because we're still a theater program.
Yeah.
You know, we're not making Zoom theater. We're not starting to commercialize what we do. We're not going to put it on Instagram and Facebook Live and all those other platforms. It's an educational training tool. And we can look at it and see what worked and what didn't work. And the next time, if we have to do it again, we'll be better at it.
Yeah.
But that's the ultimate goal, you know?
I'm hoping, no promise, but I'm hoping that we can put something together maybe that is a bit of I'm using the phrase sizzle reel. I don't even know if that's right, but
a teaser, a trailer.
Yeah, a little video promo on it, not promo, but that isn't going to be about the actual production, but really idea of like how we had production meetings and how the lighting designer worked and how the sound designer worked. It was a beautiful thing to watch. And I think in this time, I'm constantly finding myself in this position, working for this institution. So grateful that I have this opportunity. So grateful that I have something to do with my days, a job, the literal stuff, you know what I mean? But also I think you can translate that into your everyday life, because I think everybody is sort of finding themselves at bay, at a loss. And so any opportunity that we have to have conversations about the things that matter to us the most, you know what I mean? Telling a story, you know, the theatrical experience, the collaborative experience, being vulnerable, learning, you know, digging into the words of a great playwright or a great writer. Those are all still available to us, even though we're not, you know, in person, you know, and so I've been really grateful to be a part of watching how that all goes. It's been a pretty cool. I mean, don't get me wrong. Maybe other people can relate to it. It's been bumpy. There are times when you think, how in the world? Like, I'm noticing more and more, most of us are doing our jobs and then we're doing the new job, which is learning how to do the old job in the new way.
Yep. Yeah.
And I think our students are having the same experience. And there's been a leveling, I think, now we're in the new world. We know what it looks like. We figure out how to get the Zoom thing going, and we can start to focus maybe a little bit more on what we've decided we love and we care about. And because who knows what's going to happen in the future? You know, it forces you to be in the now.
Yeah, it also, you know, forced us to turn to our students and ask them in this time, what do you need? Which I think is a question that should always be asked in a training program as well, because individually they all need different things. And so it became this thing where what works on Zoom and what doesn't. What keeps you engaged and tuned in, and what allows you to like dip into your chair and slowly start sinking away, that you then turn off your video and you're offline a little bit and you're listening to a podcast as opposed to being in a studio where everybody's engaged and front-footed. So it becomes that thing where it's like, what do we let go and what still works as a seminar? Text analysis, approaching a play, dissecting a play. What's the event of a scene? Talking about scene work, maybe working a scene. Monologues definitely work on Zoom. You know, I feel like, well, like I said at the beginning, are we doing a Shakespeare side by just looking at the camera? You know, so it becomes this thing on, there's a major focus now on the written word. We listen to text in a different way because of this new Zoom medium. We talk in a directional way towards the microphone that we now utilize so that every word is heard and it doesn't go away. And we lose what the playwright actually wrote. It's not about throwing things away and mumbling it away. It's like, no, what was the end of that line? I need to hear what the playwright said. So in a way, we're still teaching theater in that sense. We're not getting away from the importance of the text, because that's where it all lives. That's where character work grows from. That's where it all stems from. That's the imagination launch pad. So that hasn't shifted. The written word is still here and we can utilize it. And so all of a sudden we start tuning in a different way. I sometimes start watching the Zoom scene, an A-B scene between two characters, and it starts glitching or something starts happening, and I just turn sideways and I listen. You know, and sure, there's a delay. Sure, you can't feel the actor's breath in your presence. Sure, you can't turn to the right and be like, oh my God, did you notice that nuance? No, but there's an isolated experience that tunes the ear into text that is so important for the theater. Because a lot of people always say, throw it away, make it sound natural. But if we're hearing a story, we want to cling on to every word. And sure, we can relax it and see how much we have to push it or how much we can let it go and be messy. But that's a decision we have to make once we've done the technical work of making every word understood. That's theater.
I have a question for you, Jesse.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
A question on you right now. Well, because as is all of our faculty, you and I are also theater artists.
That's right.
And I don't know if there are a lot of theaters right now, the Old Globe being the institution that we partner with for this education, you know, like a lot of theaters are struggling to try to find ways to reach out and to connect to their audiences. And I have found that it is more enjoyable for me watching the students learn in this medium than the possibility of having to like try to be in a play that would be a product. Does that make sense? You know, I think that the great gift that the students and we all have right now is we don't have this pressure to create something that is going to have a monetary value that people are going to give us money to, you know what I mean? And I have less interest myself personally in trying to put myself out there in a way like, well, tune in on Friday for my monologues by Shana. Like, I you know what I mean? Like, I'm a little nervous about it. Now, if you and I wanted to have, like, with a group of artists, let's read a play together, or let's really talk about the language, or let's try something, let's experiment with it, but nobody can watch. That's interesting to me. But I'm still a little nervous myself about the idea of doing what I love in this world. Do you have any feelings like that?
Well, I think we have to continue to experiment, you know, Shana, but I feel like we have to take away the fact that we're going to charge people to come see a product that's going to be highly produced when we're in our home offices. Right. You know, it's like, what lighting do I have? Am I blocking stuff that shouldn't be seen, you know, and stuff like that. So it becomes a different thing, but I feel like conversations about theater and where we're headed and how it's going to change, that's really engaging. Yes. A one-on-one Zoom conversation about a monologue and working on something, you know, I think has been done. That's how people get into programs. right? They work with coaches, acting coaches, and all of a sudden they're working monologues so that they can get into the audition room and get into whatever acting program they want to get into. So it's not like it hasn't been utilized. It just becomes like we can't pretend that this is what theater is becoming. I think we're all yearning for the fact that we will get back together again.
Yeah.
The
And
ghost light will go. Yeah, the ghost light will go away, and the actual lights will turn back on, and we'll see people in front of us.
You brought up something that reminded me a little bit of one of the, and I know we're going to turn it over to the chat and to Tanya in a second, but
Sure.
I think one of the great things that's come out of this is that it has forced us to help our students with utilizing just what you were talking about, in that most industry professionals, television, film, and theater now use self-tape, now use some form of what we're doing right now to audition for a play or a television show or a commercial or a film, and or for a program. And that this has been an interesting opportunity for us to start working with industry professionals and to sort of up our game and help our students in a weird way. You know, it's like you have to have a certain level of acceptance and flexibility in where things are headed, because there isn't going to be like, and tomorrow we're 100% back to the way we were. You know, this impact every industry. And so I think it's great that in a strange way, this has been provided some opportunities for our students and for ourselves in the program that we wouldn't normally have.
Yeah, I also feel that people's hearts right now are wide open, you know, and they're yearning for connection, whether it be through Zoom, through a phone call, you know, listening to a podcast, thinking that you're live in a concert, you know, from a live recording. So it just becomes like, how do we use it? And the fact is, there's people that are reaching out to programs, training programs, acting programs, and saying, hey, I have this masterful class that I can teach on Zoom, just invite me. And you wouldn't believe how many emails I've gotten. And I'm like, wow, we have to sift through these now because people want to help. And we brought like guest art, like Barry Edelstein taught a Shakespeare seminar through Zoom. And the students were floored by it. They were inspired for the next 3 days, you know? And so people that say you can't teach through Zoom, I got another thing I want to say, that there's certain things I don't think you can teach through Zoom, but you can modify them and figure out a way to come around and come at it sideways so that we start teaching certain aspects of what we want to teach, so that when we do get into the studio or the dance space, that all of a sudden we're already there knowing what the technique and how we start building the steps to make it happen in real time. And that to me is important, you know, having you know, casting directors from New York that we would normally not have access to, reaching out and doing an audition technique class with our students and talk about where the industry is headed and what they don't know, you know.
We've had network television reach out to us. We've had casting directors from some of the largest theaters in the country. A big part of our, obviously our program is with the Old Globe. And so we're working with the Old Globe constantly on finding opportunities for our students in this new world to still maintain that relationship, which is such an important part of the Shiley Graduate Theater Program.
Yeah.
And like you said, people who would normally be too busy or wouldn't be able to travel, you know what I mean, have been able to spend time with our students. So I think that, coupled with bringing in someone to help them learn how to use this medium to provide the best self-tape auditions they can, that kind of rose to the surface a little bit because of the situation.
Yeah, we started bringing in our first years to take that class, which we usually wouldn't do, but it's like, oh, we're all on camera. Yep. You know, here's the thing, you use Zoom and you're watching television, you know, but television is also watching you. So your psyche gets a little broken and you're like, God, I wish I could vanish that little window on the side. And I know you can, but then once it's gone, the mystery of you thinking, how do I look right now while I'm screaming or wearing my heart on my sleeve, then all of a sudden it becomes this other thing. So it is a different medium. It is a different world. Can we use it? Absolutely. How? Please keep exploring and let's keep communicating, because I feel like every institution should band together now and figure out the best ways to do things. And I feel like that's what's happening. whether we like it or not, because it's the level playing field. You know, all the competitive aspects about, oh, well, my program's better than yours, gone. And it's like, how do we assist each other as a community of artists to thrive in this new world? Because it's right around the corner. I cannot wait to get back in a room with people and tell stories. It's that simple, you know, Shana? And it almost drives me to tears because I want it so bad. And I'm hoping it's right around the corner, but who knows? And in the meantime, we'll just adapt, you know? Like, I think like a rehearsal, like a theater rehearsal, we just got to create endpoints for ourselves and be like, at some point I'll be here. And if that doesn't work out, then I might have to shift this way or make this choice or this decision. But then I'm going to get to this point, and then I'm going to make this decision and that choice, so that there's 3 different plans that we all organize in our heads, whether it's for training, whether it's for education, whether it's for our daily life, you know, that all of a sudden just keeps us engaged with humanity. And that's what theater is. So let's keep trying and asking questions, because I'm going to keep fighting to figure it out with all of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Tanya, did you want us to talk to anybody else, or what's next?
I would first of all like to say thank you for sharing your insights about how to teach theater during this time. I would like to leave it up to the audience now. So if you have any questions for this Q&A, please feel free to ask them in the chat. I would like to start out with a question of my own. I know that you touched on new opportunities for students that were not necessarily explored before COVID-19. How do you think this new relationship with technology has empowered or disempowered actors?
So I'm not a teacher. I am the coordinator, but I've been asked to view a couple of things. And I'm going to say I've cried several times in this process, and in happy crying. Don't want to bring the room down. Happy crying. And one of the things that springs to my mind is watching one of Ray Chambers' acting classes. He had students doing Shakespeare scenes, and I thought, ooh, this is going to be tricky. How's this going to work out? And I found myself so open to how open they were. I'm watching the students, maybe because they're younger and they're hungry and they really want to learn, you know what I mean? And I'm watching them adapt to this new world using what makes them passionate about being theater artists, but also maybe because they're younger, a little bit more adept at using this new medium, and choosing different angles with how they might speak to something, or even experimenting with their own lighting. And I've watched them, and I've seen our production of The Promise. I was one of the lucky people who was able to see it, and cried several times. And one of the reasons is because I was watching a group of collaborators who love doing what we do so much that they fought to find their way into doing what they love. They fought everybody. I watched the lighting designer work with one of our students to say, well, what if for that scene you had the light coming from underneath? That'll give you more, you know what I mean? And I watched the students be touched by the text they were given and embrace the new world and be vulnerable to whatever the text provided them. So I've watched them really embrace this, not 100% at the time, and they can't all. Of course, they're also fatigued and scared and what's going to happen, and that's all true too. I don't want to give this impression like everybody's just dancing on unicorns, and I don't know why you would dance on a unicorn, but unicorn. But I've also watched our faculty, and Jesse in particular, we've all really allowed ourselves to be open to whatever this new world is asking of us and do our best to fulfill it because we love it. I can't imagine trying to do what we're doing if I didn't love theater. That would be a different story. We would have a different conversation. The
Yeah.
conversation would be how to survive this thing when you hate what you do, so that's a big, I don't know if that answers Tanya, but I mean, I think because we're dealing with people who love what we do, we are going to find a way. We're going to find that open door and we're going to walk through it.
Yeah, if there's one thing about our faculty, and I'm so lucky, I've only been here a year, they really care. They care so much. They care not only about the art form itself, they care about the students. So the core values are still there. Now, what we're learning from Zoom is text analysis works. We can have seminar classes. We can talk about Shakespeare for days in this format. You know what I'm saying? Also, the idea of production meetings being done via Zoom, which will, save time and have everybody there and everybody's input, which is what you want at production meetings, so that we're all taking steps together towards the same production, the same idea.
For those who don't know, like production meetings where designers and production managers, stage managers, directors all get together to decide how they're going to do a show. And we had production meetings for The Promise, and they were all doing exactly what we were talking about. They were saying, well, I can underscore this using this, and I know that Zoom has this feature, so they were all just finding their own way to get in that door.
Yeah, and also for movement, of course, it's hard to say, hey, grab your broadsword and let's do a couple of different, techniques. And all of a sudden you're like, there is no broadsword. So grab your broomstick, and see how far we can take this. Then, of course, Brian Burns, our fight master, decides to start making action reels and what it is to do hand to hand, even though they haven't gotten to that, but letting their imaginations just splay right open in the sense of being like, oh, well, this is what my imagination is. And I've watched action films and this is what comes to mind. And they're creating these tiny little movies and it's working. And you can analyze that and critique it. And then they can go back and do a take two. It's amazing what's starting to come to the foreground in this format. Another thing was that I wanted to get in the mud. I'm not teaching this semester, but I definitely was like, how do you teach movement on Zoom? So I brought in choreography, some really actor choreography based, angry, flowers growing, a lot of images, right? And I made it really difficult so they wouldn't get it, an impossible task. But I sent them a video a week ahead of time that showed all the choreo from 3 different angles. Then all of a sudden, when we started the class, they had an idea of where we were headed, even though it seemed impossible. But as we started to chip away, they started to see that it was actually attainable. Of course, we didn't get to the end of the routine. Of course, there was glitches with Zoom. Of course, I had to set up my camera 7 different times so that they could catch every angle of my body in this office space. But we made it work. And they were giving me information as much as I was giving them information. And I was so happy that I had 2 classes, because all the mistakes that I did in that first class, I can correct, even though new mistakes were brought up in the second class. All of a sudden, it just started accumulating and being like, hey, maybe you can teach movement on Zoom. And that to me is hopeful. And I'm sure every faculty member across USD is going through a similar thing. You have to be patient. And as time starts unfolding, you get better at it.
Yeah.
Thank you. We have some more questions rolling in. So I'm going to ask our next question from Jacob. How is the department handling the national auditions for this fall's admissions?
That's a great question. It's interesting. We've been talking to USD on how to move forward with the new students coming in, and it's business as usual, which is really great. So we're asking people that auditioned for us across the country in New York, Chicago, San Francisco, San Diego, to join us. Now, we're lucky because we're a small program that only takes 7 students a year. So we have a list of 21 finalists that we're conversing with during these unprecedented times, and just talking to them, letting them know that we're going to be here and we're going to be teaching some form of actor training dependent on what the world introduces to us. So we're ready to adjust, but we're being radically transparent with the people we're talking to. And it's an exciting group. I hope they all say yes, because we're going to be here and we're going to train actors for the future. You know, when I got here, I started talking about classical actor training for the 21st century. That hasn't changed. This is part of it now. How do we add this to the curriculum? And if you want to find out, come join. And we've opened doors to all of our students that are currently here in the MFA program so that they can talk to them and talk about the shift. We're also inviting new recruits to Zoom classes so they can see how we shifted and how we're teaching on Zoom and how great our faculty is at adapting.
Yep.
Next question is from Kara. She says, I teach musical theater for middle schoolers and usually do 2 shows a year, one in the fall and one in the spring. The way they are talking sounds like we might only be able to meet in groups of 10, which definitely doesn't allow us to put on a production. I loved what you said about it's not about the product, it's about the process. I have always believed that. Do you have any suggestions of what we could do in this new world if it comes down to it?
We have to be hopeful because the theater will come back. When, I don't know. So I think you have to ask about what steps you can take in this new medium so that when the door finally opens, how you rehearse, where you're at in your rehearsal process by how effectively you used Zoom in order to learn your lines, in order to talk about blocking, in order to talk about ideas, in order to talk about circumstances and what's going on, all the actor stuff, right? So that when you do finally get into a space, whether it's, 20 people in the audience in a 100-seat house, and there's only 10 of you with 6 feet between you and all the choreography and all the blocking, and maybe we're all wearing gloves, and maybe when we speak, it's a more Brechtian approach where we have to speak away and it's a more presentational sort of theater. I'm willing to figure it out because I got to tell you, I miss the breath of someone next to me. I miss sweat. I miss people's scent. I miss their warmth. I miss wanting to yell across a room to get someone's attention. I miss telling someone to not go as they're leaving. I miss saying goodbye and then sitting down for another 20 minutes to talk and you forgot that you were leaving. I miss all of that. And that to me is the human condition. But I feel like we're talking about it now. Let's talk about it as process and what we would want to do with the text that's in front of us so that when we finally get in front of each other, we're that much more ahead in the rehearsal process.
I also think, especially with youth theater, there are so many resources out there. There are so many other programs who are looking at solving that exact problem. And what I'm seeing a lot of is how much kids especially love playing with this stuff. I think in a weird way, it's the theater bug has bitten them in a different place.
Yeah.
Take that quote with you. And I think that I've already seen a lot of people posting things about how kids love dress up and doing the Zoom and finding ways to put it together and find out what your other educators are doing, because I've already seen some really clever youth musical fun stuff on Facebook that people are using, and I think there's space for that. I think there's space for the kids to still have fun doing their musical, perhaps in their kitchen with a broom and a mop on their head.
Someone asked, what do you mean when you say surrender the results?
Well, for me, I think that's something I do say because I'm constantly having to surrender the results. What I mean is, if I'm focused on how it's going to turn out, if I'm only focused on what the product is going to be, I'm not enjoying the actual experience of creating it. So if I'm doing something to the best of my ability, if I am embracing whatever the challenges now before us are in creating what it is I want to create, If I can say I'm doing that the best I can and it still doesn't come out great, of course it isn't going to come out great. Of course, working on a scene from 12th Night in my living room, trying not to let you see my wall heater, wondering how to get lighting so I don't look like a walnut with hair. You know what I mean? Like, if that's what I'm focusing on, and I'm not focusing on the language or focusing on the text or the beauty of it or the emotion of what I think is inside the language, then I'm going to have a lesser experience. So I think you have to surrender in this new medium the outcome to a certain extent, because it's a whole new world.
I also think,
That makes sense? That's what I mean when I say surrender the results. Do your best and surrender the rest.
I also think it's a great acting, note, because the truth is when we're actors and we start planning everything and we say, oh, this beat, that happens, then this, and I hope that I take it to this temperature, and you kind of score your script, right? After you do that and you put all the technical aspect into that work, then you have to let it go, because otherwise I'm going to see you working and I'm not going to believe you, especially in this medium.
Yeah.
So the more you plan and the more you think, oh, I have to hit a 10 in this line, and oh, I got to cry here. And all of a sudden you have to let that go and trust that there is no result, that the fact is that you take a ride, just like in life. Trust the technique, trust that you've done the work, and then take off, as opposed to showing us the work, because then we don't believe you. Yeah. It's not real. It's not messy enough, like the rhythms of life.
Yeah. We have time for a couple more questions.
Great.
So this one is from Ryan. Given that there are alumni who also may be struggling without work right now in theater, TV, movies, etc., have any of our graduate alumni reached out to USD to help or be a guest speaker for the classes?
It's interesting because we had started a process working with one of our alumni before all of this happened, because once Jesse got here, it was really important to me that we had a stronger relationship with our alumni. And so we have begun the process of creating a more robust and communicative alumni program that is happening literally as we speak. We're putting together the questionnaire and who it's going out to and how we're going to, to utilize that. Jesse also, we reached out to all of the alumni just to check in on them, to see how they're doing, to see, what they're up to wish them well. And we also have a sort of private Facebook group where we all communicate about how things are going. But I stay in touch with a lot of them because of social media, and a lot of our alumni are working on, like we all are, finding creative ways to do what they love in this new medium, whether it's online coaching. A lot of them are educators. A lot of them are creators of their own unique works. So they're using this medium to create series and things, you know what I mean? So kind of like the rest of us, we're all doing what we can.
Yeah, we're working really hard on growing our alumni connections, just because I just got here. So I'm interested in meeting everyone. So we did, a big reach out to say, hey, we're here, get in contact, let us know what you need. We also are accepting content that people are sending so that we can have communication on doing what we love, which is Shakespeare or doing a monologue or telling a funny story during these times. And, we just want to build an outlet that people can come back to and say, hey, I just got to get some things off my chest, or, hey, I got to speak some beautiful language. Hey, I read this passage that really speaks to the times, which Shakespeare does a lot. And so all of a sudden, you're having videos where some of our alumni are washing their hands while saying 30 seconds of Shakespeare. And it started to pick up, and it got involved with our actors that are currently in the program, and they started making their own videos. Also, Mason Conrad, he started putting remote artists out there, which is a place that people all over the country are sending in videos of them doing Shakespeare. So it just becomes this thing where we're trying to build a space where people can come share. So if you're seeing this interview or this conversation, this dialogue, please come back to USD, come back to the old Globe. you know, and I know the Old Globe is reaching out to alumni as well during this time, because we're just bringing the family together to stay together and to survive this storm.
I know that you guys talked about this a bit, but if you could look into your crystal ball, how do you think COVID-19 will affect the future of teaching theater?
Yeah.
Can I share a funny story? A friend's child said this to her the other day, and it made me so happy. She said, Mama, the morning after the virus ends, can we go to Disneyland? And there was something about that, the morning after the virus ends. Like, you know, I know that we're all in the program looking at, as everybody is, versions of what the future holds. I personally don't believe that for me, that there ever is the virus ends and now we're 100% back to where we are. So I think, for me, I think this is an opportunity to look for the gift, to look for the lesson. And there are lessons and gifts in what is challenging and difficult about this, as there are gifts of knowing to be in the moment, of knowing what you're grateful for, of remembering to connect, of remembering, you know what I mean, to enjoy life exactly as it is. And so I'm trying to take that into my job and into how we look at the program, is how can we love this as it is, and how can we slowly go back to the new world, whatever that might be. But I don't think there's going to be the morning after the virus ends, can we go to Disneyland? That's just me right now.
Yeah. I'm gonna bring Anton Chekhov back into the room. And I think, you know, it's time to find new forms. You know, the truth is, I don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know when this is going to end, but I think we're in an incubating period where we can talk about ideas and what we've always wanted to do. You know, what we thought was impossible theater might not be impossible anymore. What we think needs huge production value might not need any production value, just language. So it starts, that's like radical in this world now, you know. Let's take money and commerce away from the theater and see what the bones are. And I feel like there's a lot to learn from that. But I feel like we have to start investigating. We have to ask big questions. We have to wonder how we're going to come back. But it's going to be gradual, but it is going to be a renaissance. So I feel like all the students that are in grad schools across the country and even overseas, we're going to all lean and depend on you to show us what those new forms are. And I'm hoping that one of you or 10 of you will hire me, because I'm into the fact that you are the future. So show us what that is. I mean, I had my brother from Los Angeles, who's a social worker, talking to me about theatrical ideas of a play that he has in his mind right now about COVID-19. And I'm like, if my social brother, my social worker brother is having these ideas, I can't imagine what the playwrights across the country are thinking. And once that box of plays is open, I think it's going to be unstoppable, but I feel like we need new artists to teach us how to do those plays.
Yeah. People have been saying that theater is not going to last as long as there's been theater. So I think somehow we're going to get through it. But I don't know if that helps, Tanya.
It did. Thank you. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. I would like to thank all of you, Shana, Jesse, and our audience. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please join us next week. We will be speaking about social relationships in times of social distancing with USD Communication Studies professors Bradley Bond and Jonathan Bowman. And please stay tuned for email updates, and hopefully we can continue on with this conversation. Thank you again, and I hope to see you next Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Thanks, Shana.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jesse.
Thanks, Noel. Bye, everybody.
Bye.